Welcome everyone to the Friday, December 10th edition of the Signals from Mars live stream. I just heard some Irish crickets there in the background, sort of caught me off guard there. Yes, the opening of a can of some sort. I want to welcome everyone to the show. We have Jerry from Long Island going to the Genesis show in Queens, so he's updating us on traffic as we go. We have our newest patron, Ed Ferguson, joining us. Ed, how are you, sir?
Doing great. How are you?
I am doing great as well, and it is great
Awesome.
to have you here.
Thank you.
Let's see here. So let me see how I can configure this so it kind of looks decent. Johan, can you hear us?
I think I worked out how it goes away in the picture.
Okay.
It's when you maximize the screen. When I've got it on minimum screen at the moment, so I think he's maximizing it out, and then you lose it.
Yeah, well, he was showing up twice. He's gone again. All right, well, let's see if he logs in. Anyway, so let's see. There he is. Johan, Jeremy is saying that when you maximize the screen, that's when it goes black and cuts out.
No, it wasn't. It was the sound. You all went black.
Okay. Well, let's
now
see.
It's good.
Awesome. All right. So let's switch this around here. And all right. So today's topic was one that was brought up by Jeremy. And it is talking about the current state of hard rock and metal and talking about the future of this form of music that all of us love. And when I mean talking about the future, I want to talk about bands that we like and that we think that could be torchbearers in the future. I'm not saying that they're going to be bigger than Metallica or that they're going to be bigger than Sabbath or anything like that, but bands that we feel are going to be quality enough that 10, 15 years down the road, these are the bands that we're going to be pointing to as being the ones that are leading the charge for hard rock and metal. So let's kick things off with Johan. And in your opinion, how do you feel about the current state of hard rock and metal? Obviously, you're in Sweden, so for you, it's very different to people that are in the States. Someone like myself who is in Spain, which is not a rock-based music country at all. In Sweden and in Scandinavia, for the most part, hard rock and metal is still alive. It's still thriving, and it never really went away. So for you, what's your opinion of the current state of hard rock and metal?
Yeah, in Sweden, it's like a cycle. A band dies, another band comes up. And there's a lot of band touring right now in Sweden, small bands playing clubs, small clubs, bigger clubs. And when the major band, the big bands come to us, they always play the big arenas. So, like you said, it's the same. That is how it's always has been here. Mm-hmm. Almost not. It's not the 80s anymore, but it's still really, really good here in Sweden. A lot of bands out on the road now. So the current state is good. We have two major festivals, Sweden Rock, obviously, and Gävle Metal Festival. Mm-hmm. And then we have a lot of smaller festivals with more genre, like death metal or black metal or that kind of things. So here, heavy metal and hard rock is still doing well and feeling well.
Okay. Jeremy, what about in the UK?
It's quite similar. In terms of the festival scene, it's quite good. It's very similar. There's a lot of sort of various genres for the festivals.
Thank you very much.
And they're quite well supported. So that's good.
Thanks,
But
boss.
it's a very mixed
Appreciate
picture
you.
because a lot of the smaller venues are shutting down. So that's been a big problem. It's hard to get people out on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night to go and see rock music because, let's face it, a lot of the rock fans
Follow
are
Yellow Brick
aging.
Road,
They
baby.
don't want to go out early in the week. They want to go out the weekends. The ticket prices have been rising. We've had the pandemic, which has caused a big problem. So it's a real mixed picture, I think. If you look at it all, and obviously we've got the aging rock stars. Some of the bands we've seen many, many times, so we don't want to see them again. It's hard to get all the old fans into the new music, which is probably what we'll come onto in a minute. Right. So, I feel that there's a bit of a mixed picture, and I think the pandemic's caused a big problem. And then, of course, you've got the rise in the price of paying for music, in terms of vinyl. A lot of people now obviously want to download music, get it for free. They won't pay for it, and so that's going to have a big impact on the bands as well.
Yeah, and that's interesting. You brought up the whole thing about the aging musicians. This is something that we talked about during last week's episode with regards to 1981. Out of the top 10, there's 4 bands that are currently touring out of 10. And that, could even be whittled down to 3 at the drop of a hat. Motley Crue, Def Leppard, Iron Maiden, Ozzy, and maybe you could say AC/DC if they decide to do something, but more than, all right, so let's say 5. The other half are gone.
Okay, you're good to go. Enjoy.
Actually, Saxon is in here as well, so it's 6 out of 10. The other ones are completely gone. And as time goes by, we're going to see that more and more. We're going to see bands just either fall apart or people are going to die and they're not going to continue. And we're going to need other bands to come along and fill that void. So I get exactly what you're saying. Ed, what part of the States are you in?
I'm in Kentucky. They call it the bluegrass state. Kind of the horse capital of the world.
Belmont,
big horse
Belmont,
racing industry
baby.
here. What was that?
Belmont.
That's right. I'm right in the middle
now,
of Kentucky, about an hour away from Louisville and Cincinnati.
Right.
Racetrack's
So
on the other side
basically,
of the arena, Victor.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, Jerry's
at Belmont.
As he's at Belmont to go see Genesis tonight. So
cool. That should be a good show.
Yeah. So in Kentucky, I'm assuming when I moved over to Europe, you had Clear Channel and all these big conglomerates taking over all the local radio stations. So a lot of what we were listening to shifted. If there was anything rock-based, it became, classic rock. It became the same 50 songs every day. If you're in the New York area, you're lucky enough to have something like a WSOU, which is a college station, which still plays, all types of hard rock and metal music.
We have one of those here.
Okay. So that was my question for you in Kentucky. What do you consider the current state for this form of music?
Where I live, it's better than it ever was. Growing up, the heavy metal scene was just me and my high school buddies here in the middle of Kentucky. Anything that we wanted to see, we would have to go to Louisville,
right,
or up to Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you can't do that until you're old enough to drive and get there on your own.
Right.
So it was hard to see certain things. Of course, now we have an arena that a lot of the big bands would come to, although my parents never let me go to those shows. So I missed a lot of good stuff growing up.
Right.
But over the years, there's a metal scene that has grown here in Lexington, where I live, and there's a whole metal scene. I keep meeting dudes with long hair and the metal dress, at grocery stores working, and I get into conversations about music and find out that they've got they're in bands, and there's a whole club scene of metalheads here now. So I think it's grown here, and really since 2004, when some of the thrash metal bands started coming back, playing the good riffs, and metal started to become cool again. I feel like the metal scene has done nothing but grow, and it's probably in a better state than it's ever been in. Besides, all the goodness we grew up with in the 80s and 90s.
Right. Okay. Steve, we've had the conversation, and a few weeks back when I interviewed Return to Earth, Chris Penny, the drummer who was also in Dillinger and Escape Plan and Coheed and Cambria, he talked about going to Obsessions to see a bunch of shows because he's from Randolph, and that's where Obsessions used to be.
Yeah.
And for us, I mean, before discovering SOU, there was WDHA, and you had Metal Mania on Friday nights with a little blip of an appearance from Eddie Trunk for 5 minutes every Friday, giving you the metal news before he actually became a DJ. How much has that changed in that area? Do you feel that there's still a presence with what the scene is like locally? Obviously, the Starland is a place that a lot of bands go to play to nowadays instead of going into the city sometimes. Again, there's the power of SOU, who's always been there for the most part. What's it like in New Jersey now for hard rock and metal?
Well, right by us, you know how sparse it was for metal for the most part. Anyway, aside from Obsessions. Mostly the Starland still gets pretty major names.
Right.
Atlantic City's doing pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
The slightly bigger names. As far as that, and then the PNC Art Center, or whatever it is this week.
Right.
That and the one in Camden, also whatever it is this week.
Yeah.
They seem to get the majority of the shows.
Right.
You generally don't have to leave New Jersey to see any tour that's coming to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part. I mean, once in a while there's something that you would have to go to New York for.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, it's still pretty good.
Okay.
Yes, but as far as small clubs, like Obsessions, there's not really anything, or at least that I know of.
Yeah. Well, I think in the late 80s, a lot of that stuff started whittling away. You had a lot of smaller clubs that just started going away little by little because a lot of the bands were playing the more, the bigger venues.
Right.
And if they couldn't play there on their own, they were, doubling up with other bands and playing stuff. So, yeah. So I think, for the most part, we saw the start of that, but it's cool to hear that, obviously the Starland, there have been, I guess Anthrax shot a DVD there as well. There's been another band that, there's been a few bands that have shot there as an alternative to recording in New York. But then you have Armored Saint, who just did their latest live album, did it at the Beacon Theater. So Rob Rowe, who is listening and couldn't log in, is saying that rock and metal is great here in Missouri. So that is good to hear, sir.
St. Louis, represent.
There you go. Brad, out in Utah.
Yeah, first of all, I have to say, how is it that Jerry has better audio when he's wandering around in the streets than he does at home?
I'm closer to the city where the towers are.
I got you.
Long Island ain't got no towers like Empire State Building.
Yeah.
Yeah, the island is long, but the towers are short. Hey, but yeah, and you look great too, Jerry. So
Thank you.
So well done, and welcome, Ed.
Wait.
Thanks for joining us. And I'm so glad to see that Twisted Steve is alive.
Give me about an hour, Brad, and I'll be half in a bag.
Yeah, which half? That's the real question. And a quick shout out to everybody in the chat room, Rob and I don't know who's Judith
as well. Yeah,
Judith.
Judith Perkins. That's spam. So
oh, okay, we don't like spam. Well, I do. Spam and eggs is good. And Jose, right? Jose is there.
Yeah.
See, I don't have my glasses on. This is bad.
Oh, you're trying to keep your image up. I get it.
Yeah. I'm trying to be vain over here. Yeah. So let's talk about rock in Utah. I mean, they've got a pretty good rock scene here. We don't get all bands because there's nothing close to here in the Western United States. Everything's spread out, and Salt Lake isn't always on the way to anywhere. So it's all about the promoters too. Obviously, well, as you know, Victor, I just got tickets for Iron Maiden. They're actually going to come here this next year, so I'm pretty excited about that. But the venues here really kind of suck too. I mean, there's very few that I consider like a great place to see a band. A lot of the smaller bands do come through here. There's a really cool rock club here that gets a lot of the hard rock bands in. So that's kind of nice, but it's pretty small. I mean, you're getting more than a couple hundred people tops in there, even when it's packed. So, I mean, and there's a lot of local bands that are rock and heavy metal bands, and they're playing out a lot of original music, but I don't know that it's going anywhere outside of here.
Right. Well, that's an interesting point that you brought up, because when tours are routed, if they're going from California, chances are they're probably going through Texas before they're going through Utah, because there's more places to play, and places like Dallas are a stronghold for hard rock and metal. So
even more so San Antonio. San Antonio is the heavy metal capital of the U.S., in my opinion.
Yeah. So there you go. So it makes more sense for them to take the tours down through the Southwest than it is to cut across the Rockies to get to where you are.
Yep. Yeah.
So
I don't know about that San Antonio comment.
Okay, wait. This is cool, though, Jerry. What did
you might have to come out here and get on a Long Island Railroad train for a Maiden show, and then change your answer.
Okay, I'm up for that.
There's like 11 million people here, just to let you know.
Okay,
and they're all Maiden fans.
There you go.
Tell them, Victor.
Jerry,
the tri-state area.
Yeah, well, the tri-state area. I mean, if you add everyone up from
Philadelphia,
New York, New Jersey, Connecticut,
Philadelphia,
Pennsylvania, yeah, it's 52 million people in total.
It'll crush San Antonio.
And
all remember, right. I'll tell you what. I'll come out there and go to a show with you, and then you meet me in Texas for a show in San Antonio.
Yeah. New Yorkers don't go to Texas.
Jerry, so obviously you're saying that Long Island is still a hotbed for hard rock and metal. I couldn't get any of the stations from Long Island where I was in North Jersey, but
BAB 102.3.
Ask you, okay, has BAB kept up with a lot of the hard rock and metal? Do they just play classic rock? Do they have a metal show at night?
It's just classic.
Okay.
There's nothing new.
But
they just put in a tape.
Okay. But for you, based on what you're saying, there's still enough people in Long Island that are just diehards.
Absolutely. Got to remember, there's a lot of immigrants from South America that are here. So imagine all those South American immigrants. They're all Maiden fans, and they're all living on Long Island or in the tri-state area.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize with a lot of the DVDs they've done. Maiden has done, 2 in South America? Halford, Rush, Anthrax. they've all recorded down there because you kind of take for granted living in the States or certain parts of Europe where you can see shows continuously. So you're like, I'll catch them next time.
Right.
But
We could see one on Long Island, one in New York City, and go to Jersey. And if I want to go to Philadelphia, if I want to go to Boston, I could see the same show 5 times.
Yeah. Whereas some of these people are getting to see Maiden maybe once every 5 or 6 years. So that's why they're selling, 100,000 seat stadiums or packed to see them.
Johan, you could have saw Rush 5 times.
I've seen Rush 5 times, but
no, on the same tour.
Yeah, I understand.
Philadelphia, Jersey, New York City, Long Island, Connecticut, Boston.
I know it's unfair.
You would have lost your mind, Johan.
Yeah, I know.
I will say this. I've selected albums for the next batch of albums of the week, and there may be a Rush album in there just as a tribute to Johan.
Good.
It may not be one of the albums you've expected, but it's one of the ones that I have on vinyl. So,
I know which one it is.
So do I.
Snakes and Arrows, right?
Snakes and Arrows is actually my favorite Rush album, believe it or not.
It's a great record.
Yeah.
It's a great record.
Yeah. That's why I want Maiden to work with Nick Raskulinecz, because he's one of these producers that hones bands in. And not to say that Rush was off target, but there's like the last 2 albums that he produced are so far above what Rush had done in decades, because they had the right guy with them to help guide them. And that's what Maiden's missing right now is Kevin Shirley's just a yes man. That, okay, you want that song to be
27 minutes long?
Sure, why not?
No. Great idea, guys. Great idea.
Yeah. And, obviously he's looking at his bank account. Oh, okay, cool. So I'm getting how many million off of this? 83-minute Maiden song? Sure,
right.
Why not?
He's a bartender for Iron Maiden. Come on.
There you go.
Whatever they want.
Let's talk the flip side. Let's start with you, Jerry. What bands are you currently into? Newer bands that you think...
Bullet for My Valentine kicks ass.
Okay. See,
he did a show here a couple of years ago at the Paramount in Huntington.
Okay.
And you could tell he was just like a bona fide frontman. He had the whole crowd in his hand the whole time. It was almost like watching James Hetfield, when he was younger. He had the whole crowd.
And that's kind of funny because he caught a lot of shit early on saying that Bullet for My Valentine is going to be headlining the Download Festival in Europe in just a few years. And he said, we'll be just as big as Metallica. And they ended up having issues with Rob Zombie. They were opening for Rob Zombie, and I forget what happened. It was either something to do with the band's sound or something along those lines where there was an issue, and they ended up getting kicked off of the tour. So he was instantly branded as being like a guy who's had like a big ego.
Right.
You're saying
he has a big. That's what I'm saying. Like he's got that in him to take that band to a whole nother level.
Right.
They kick ass. They kick ass.
This last album, much like Jeremy and I were speaking about the last Volbeat album that just came out, that last Bullet for My Valentine album, in my opinion, has finally given me an album that I've been wanting from Bullet since their second album.
Right.
I love their first 2 albums, but then after that, they kind of lost me. But, a band can put out an album that you're not entirely thrilled about, but you see them live and they can still kick your ass.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How long have those guys been around, though?
Bullet's close to
2008, 2007.
Really? They're that new?
No, might even sooner than that.
Okay.
I saw them on that Rob Zombie tour.
What was that, Steve?
I saw them on that Rob Zombie tour. It was them and Lacuna Coil opening.
There you go.
Again, it's a band that could carry the torch for the next 10, 20 years because they're not so old.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that they're new, like this week new.
Right. So,
what'd you think about him, Steve, when you saw him?
I thought they were okay. They didn't blow my socks off, but they were fine.
But we're also talking about, like an album or two into their career. It's not the same as, So according to Wikipedia, they formed in '98, and their first album came out in '05.
I was close.
I was
close.
But the first big album in the States was the second one in '08. So
thank you.
That makes sense. There you go.
I listened to that album on the way home from St. Louis. That's how I know the year.
There you go. That's
true. That's how I know the year, 2008. That's when I came back to Long Island.
Yeah. Scream, Aim, and Fire has a lot of good stuff on it. So I agree with you. And like I said, the new self-titled album.
And Trivium. Trivium is just as good.
Trivium is another band that I remember when they first came out, there were people that kind of discarded them and said, yeah, well, they've got an album or two that's okay, but they'll fade. But album after album, they still have 3, 4, 5 good songs on each album.
Right.
So I would have to agree with you.
Keeping the metal alive.
There you go. Ed, in your opinion, what newer bands do you think are the torchbearers for hard rock and metal in 10, 15 years from now?
I don't have an easy answer for that. It's hard to say. Most of the new stuff I listen to are the bands we grew up with that are still putting out good albums.
Okay.
And then some of the newer stuff I hear is more on the extreme metal side.
Okay.
And of course, some of those bands can last a very long time, but it's hard to say. One new band that I like a lot is called Noisem. A bunch of teenagers that learned about old extreme metal from the 80s from their uncle's record collection and put together a band, and they've now got about 3 records out. But I don't think they're the kind of band that are making a lot of money, so who knows how long they'll be around. Yeah, as far as the hard rock and basic, heavy metal scene, like a lot of the bands you all mentioned, I don't really get into that much.
Okay.
It's either kind of death metal bands or a good thrash metal band. Some of the bands that I listen to, they're newer from 2000 on. Havoc is a good thrash metal band that I've been listening to since then. But yeah, a lot of it's listening to the great albums that some of these old bands are still putting out. They're still showing the young kids how it's done,
So I'm seeing that I'm going to have to send you a bunch of thrash bands from like the last 10 to 15 years. If you're into Havoc, there's plenty others that I can send your way. So
yeah, I'll have that conversation with you all week long, anytime, buddy. That's my thing.
There you go. Awesome. Steve, for you, what bands do you feel?
They're not exactly new, but I would say Black Label Society.
Okay.
I don't know if they probably don't qualify as a new band.
Do you like their new album?
I do. I think it's really good.
I haven't heard anything on it yet to catch my ear. It's not bad, but I just I'm just not hearing anything that makes me want to play it twice.
Okay. Well, maybe the next time you listen, you'll grab something, but that's cool.
Oh, that Mafia record's my favorite.
I think 1919 Eternal is my favorite.
Cool.
Yeah, that's where I jumped on with them. I think 1919 Eternal is where I think Zach started getting the formula right. So, but
the thing I like that album, I think, was like the last one that he. I mean, I love Black Label Society, but he was after that he kind of went into like the goat voice. And but now like on the new album, I think he's back to the 1919 Eternal, like, oh, I can actually like sing
Right.
kind of stuff, which he absolutely can sing fine, but he does like to go into that goat registry, as I like to call it, and it seemed like he was kind of going heavy on that for a while with some songs.
Right.
So I was happy to hear him chill out on that a little bit, but you know, Zach's still my guy. So
about a month ago, I was on a BLS trip, and I'm picking my kids up from school, and my 9-year-old says, "Is this Ozzy?" I go, "Close." I go, he wants to sound an awful lot like Ozzy. I go, but he's Ozzy's guitarist. I go, I'm proud of you at 9 years old actually deciphering that it's close to Ozzy's voice, so I'll take it.
Yeah. Raising them right, Victor.
There you go. Brad, for you, what bands are you playing on Yarg Metal that you feel will be torchbearers of hard rock and metal in the decade to come?
You know, yeah, I'm playing it well. As you know, I'm playing a lot of new music. As far as torchbearers go, that's a difficult question because the marketplace doesn't really encourage new artists. I mean, it doesn't really support new artists. It's very difficult for these bands to get out there. I mean, I do have to say I'm hoping to go see a concert here in the next month or so. Dirty Honey and Mammoth WVH. I got to get that right. They're touring together here. So, I mean, those are bands that really have one album each. I mean, Dirty Honey's got an EP as well. And they're young-ish. I mean, they're new bands. And it'll be interesting to see if they have kind of what it takes to go the distance and if they can get enough steam behind them to get out there and make it happen. Jerry's shaking his head. Jerry doesn't think so.
Dude, Mammoth is so vanilla, it's not funny.
All right.
It's so vanilla.
Yeah, I have to see him live. I have to see him live.
Again, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's vanilla. It's just, it's nothing that I need to hear.
All right. But like I said, I got to see him live. And that's what I mean, it's one thing to make a good album, but it's another thing to be a great act live. And I think that's what it's going to take for a band to, headline and to actually fill a place.
Yeah. I expected more from the little Van Halen. I didn't need him to sound exactly like Eddie, but I thought he'd get loud and heavy drums, and double bass, and it's just FM radio rock.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll let you know after I see it.
I mean, for a kid who's really into Tool, it doesn't even sound like. I mean, again, it's not loud. It's something you'd hear a soccer mom playing in a van.
Yeah, I think he probably got caught up in the entrapments of, he was playing with Mark Tremonti for a bit there. And it's kind of in line with what Tremonti and Alter Bridge and all this stuff is kind of all about.
It's very friendly and safe.
Yeah, I'm hoping, my fingers crossed. I've listened to that album a few times. I don't think the album is bad, but I think it's a safe album, as you're saying.
Thank you, Victor.
Yeah, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that maybe after he gets out on the road and he plays and stuff, that maybe the second album that he works on.
I would love to see him kick ass.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. So Brad with the Dirty Honey and
yeah, we'll see. And I'd love it if more soccer moms had Yarg Metal playing in their cars. That would be awesome. So crank it up, girl.
All right, I gotta leave.
All right, Jerry, have a
blast, man.
Have a great time.
Well, that was quick.
There we go. Johan, for you, I know that one of the first shows that you appeared with us, you were talking about a Swedish band called Heimdall, maybe?
Horndal.
Horndal, okay. But
not to be confused with Hornball.
Yeah, no, I was thinking of the character from the Thor movie, Heimdall or whatever his name is. Anyway, for you, what band do you feel is the could be the kind of torchbearer for hard rock and metal in 10 years? You're saying that in Sweden it's always kind of fluid. It's always bands coming in, bands coming out. Are there any bands now that are smaller that you think that in 10 years they're going to be at the top of the chain and being talked about like Arch Enemy or like, At the Gates or bands like that?
That was not the question that I have prepared.
Okay. Like a true politician. Okay.
I prepare myself a little bit for this event tonight, and I think those bands I'm going to list now are the bands that I feel or think will fill the Globe Arena in Stockholm or Scandinavium in Gothenburg when the big ones are gone.
Okay.
And the bands that I have listed tonight is Arch Enemy, Rammstein, of course. They fill more than the Globe. They fill the biggest stadiums we have. Slipknot will go to the next level here. Five Finger Death Punch, huge band here. Volbeat, of course, and Ghost, of course. Those are the next ones, the next headliners, if you will, after when Maiden and AC/DC is gone. Amon Amarth, perhaps, and I like to say another band called Mirath. They're from Tunisia.
Yep.
I saw them at Sweden Rock 2019, and they were a huge crowd, and everyone knows about them. I didn't, but they were really, really good live.
Okay.
So that
thanks to Victor, I know about Mirath, and I'm playing them on Yard Metal. So thank you, Victor.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you their Sweden Rock story. They played at the stage that's in the tent, which is the smallest stage. And I think it was because I think their last album, Shahili, came out in 2019. So this was 2018 or 17 that they played Sweden Rock for the first time. One of the bands that was supposed to close the night, one of the members got sick or they didn't get to Sweden Rock. They couldn't get there. So one of the organizers saw them playing the tent and said, "Do you want to play at midnight on the big stage?" And they said, "Yeah, of course." So they played twice in one day. They were one of the first bands to play and then played at night. And they said that as they started playing, like they saw a lot of the same faces that they saw in the morning, but little by little, as they were playing, more and more people were coming to the stage to watch them. And at the end of the interview, I interviewed the singer. He said, "Well, thanks to that performance, we're being asked back this next year to play it at Sweden Rock." So I thought it was an awesome story to hear that, because of course my introduction to them was seeing one of their videos, and they're from Tunisia. So they have an old Roman amphitheater that seats about, I think they told me 8,000 to 10,000 people. So the first video I ever saw with them was, this old amphitheater filled with people to the top. The intro was like fire eaters and just women belly dancing with fire, and
they had them on stage.
Yeah. And then the song just starts up, and it was so cool. It captivated me right away to the point where I said, I have to interview somebody from this band, because it was such an allure to, first of all, a band from Tunisia, which, was something kind of unheard of for the most part. And just seeing that they were playing, almost like Dream Theater type metal that was mixed in with a lot of Arabian things that, a lot of things that made me listen to Led Zeppelin when I was a kid. A lot of that Arabic sounding music pulled me in with them. So I was like, all right, so they're mixing a bunch of things that I absolutely love here, and I need to speak to them. So it That's one of my most memorable interviews that I've ever done. People ask me, they say, well, who's your biggest interview? And I said, well, I enjoy the conversations more so with people as opposed to being able to say, oh, I interviewed so-and-so. So that conversation was great, hearing about them playing there, what it was like for them as kids to have to sneak music into the country, and how they would have to buy copies of albums. Like it was like for us, tape trading for them was they went to the store and they said, oh, I want to listen to AC/DC. So they made a copy of the AC/DC album and they sold it to them. So they sold them copies, and that was the only way they could get anything that was remotely heavy metal, because it was illegal in Tunisia at that point. So I thought it was cool. So it's awesome that you're bringing them up, Johan.
Yeah, and it was 2019, and the band they replaced were Behemoth.
Was Behemoth. There you go. Okay. So awesome. Jeremy, we are circling back to the UK here.
Yeah.
What band do you feel is one of these bands that could be torchbearers in the future?
Is that only one, or can I mention a few?
You can mention a few, because I mean, I was trying to whittle it down, and I have a list of 8. So
yeah, I had a list of about 13, but I've whittled that down as we're talking, mainly because we've already mentioned a few. Bullet for My Valentine, I had Volbeat, I had Five Finger Death Punch, obviously I had Ghost as well. A few others that haven't been mentioned: Avenged Sevenfold, Disturbed, Biffy Clyro, Bring Me the Horizon, Gojira. They're all headlining festivals now here in the UK. So I think, I'm not talking about bands that actually all I love myself, but they're all bands that I know are coming through and that they've got a big following. The Struts are really getting big as well here in the UK. The Pretty Reckless are a really good band. They are one of my favorites. I'm not sure whether they'll make it to be a massive headliner, but they're really good. But I went to Leeds Festival about 4 or 5 years ago, and apart from Ghost, there was another band on which blew my mind. I went to see Metallica, and I ended up watching this band and thinking they're going to headline soon, and they were Royal Blood. And as we know, we've listened to the latest album. They've turned a little bit disco-y, disco metal, I would call it. But they're fantastic. Live, they were probably in the top 3 bands that I'd ever seen live. And so, it was obvious that they were going to come up and be big. And they're playing headline shows in Manchester next year. I looked to try and get a ticket. Most of the shows sold out. It's only £32 for a ticket, so it's quite cheap, but it's pretty full, and I think there's a lot of, they're making headway. They're getting a lot of bandwidth here. They're being played on national radio a lot, and I think that they are going to be, one of the headliners. Whether you class them as heavy metal, whether you class them as hard rock, they don't really fit into any category, but they're certainly a band that I'd suggest are going to be one of the bands that are going to take it forward, really.
Wait a second, I missed. Who are you talking about, Jeremy?
Royal Blood.
Oh, Royal Blood. Okay, yeah. All right, thank you.
Yeah, that Leeds performance also. I will say that I got that performance through nefarious means right after it was broadcast. And it was one of these things where, I was like, all right, well, let me see what bands are playing. Because Leeds and Reading, what a lot of people nowadays don't know, used to have a metal day. So you used to have Maiden and Saxon and Priest and all these bands play one day. And then you had the regular rock bands play the other day. And since they were organized by the same people, they would swap days. So if the metal day was on Friday at one festival, it was at the other festival on a Saturday. And now they've just kind of mixed things in. And yeah, I mean, they were promoted as originally, it was funny. They were promoted as like an alternative rock band. And when I finally got to hear them, I'm like, they're closer to a hard rock metal band than they are to an alternative band at that point, because the drums sounded exactly like John Bonham on the first album. I mean, they had like a Zeppelin-y vibe. And then the bass, because there are no guitars, sounded closer to Sabbath in a lot of songs than they did, anything that they were being compared to, in my opinion. And obviously this last album, because Josh Homme of Queens of the Stone Age produced it, it's a lot more, rock or pop rockish than anything else, or that they've previously done. But also all three of their albums are different. So there's, I think, something on each album for you to listen to that actually that's there to kind of draw your attention. They're on my list as well. And it's funny because I think that they've changed how younger bands are coming up. Like there's always like one band that's like a focal point that will get crapped on because they become like the biggest band of a movement because they were one of the first bands to do it. I think you have Royal Blood. I listed another band called Dead Poet Society, which if you listen to them, it's 4 guys instead of 2, but they sound a lot like Royal Blood as well. There's another band that we talked about out of the UK called the Dust Coda, which is the same thing. Yeah. I don't have them on my list, but they sound like they're in the vein of Royal Blood as well. I had Gojira. I have Tetrarch, which is a band that I interviewed as well. But to me, I'll have to see how they move forward because I don't know if that's going to be just a band that will be known as just a new metal revival, and maybe it'll just be nostalgic, or it'll be somebody who can evolve and continue to stay there. They've definitely got the musical chops, but we'll see, where they take things. The Warning, a band of 3 sisters out of Mexico, which are just ridiculous. When I heard the song Choke, it came up automatically on YouTube. After watching something else, I wasn't paying attention. I heard the song, like, what the hell is this? So it got my attention to watch the video again, and that's when I started to kind of dig deeper into them. And they just released an EP. They were just on the Metallica tribute. They did a rendition of Enter Sandman, where they completely changed the song itself, which is interesting because they were first discovered as being 13-year-olds covering Enter Sandman on the street. So 3 girls that were 15, 14, and 13 years old covering Enter Sandman got people's attention, and then years later they like reworked the song to make it their own, and it actually sounds pretty cool. It's one of the only covers off of that Metallica tribute album that just came out that I think is worth listening to. Other bands
is my favorite too.
Is it?
Yeah, off of that album, or of all the Enter Sandman covers, that one was really good.
Yeah, because there are some bands that either it's just so far out of left field, like they did a reggaeton version of it, which just turns me off, or they just do an exact cover of the song. Ghost did, for the most part, an exact cover, but it's Tobias singing, so that's the only thing that really varies.
And I was looking forward to the Ghost one, and I was like, it's okay.
It's okay, but it doesn't stand out. This other one, where you hear it, unless you know Enter Sandman and know the chord structures and know the actual lyrics, you don't realize it's the same song. And it's still, Enter Sandman is not my favorite song by any stretch of the imagination, but, I think that they put an interesting twist on it. Mm-hmm. The last 3 bands that I have listed here are 3 bands that I've featured on Patreon in one way or another. One is Spirits Adrift, which used to just be a 2-piece, and they're now a 5-piece band. They're doing like new wave of British heavy metal revival type heavy metal. I don't know how else to classify them, but they're doing it in a way that it sounds modern, which I think sounds really cool. Haunt is another band that I would put in that same category. They're a band that has gone totally DIY with a lot of things too. They had a deal with I forget what label it was, and they just renounced everything and just have started to sell everything through Bandcamp because they figure that, you know, they'll make more money off of it and prefer to just do it all themselves. And the last band that I want to mention is Spirit Box, who Rob Rowe mentioned in the chat. Now, Spirit Box surprised me because the singer and the guitarist used to be a part of a band called I Wrestled a Bear Once. And that band is more of a like deathcore band or metalcore band with guttural vocals and just a mixed mosh of a lot of different things. And Spirit Box has elements of that, but Courtney LaPlante, who's the lead singer, does a lot of clean vocals, does a lot of melodic stuff. There's a lot of extreme stuff on there as well. So there's like a balance of everything. So it's almost like if you listen to that, you have like a good menu of things to choose from. Where I think if you listen to the entire album, it's a good musical journey, like an old school, like 70s or 80s album, but through a modern approach where no two songs sound alike. So Rob Rowe in the chat mentioned Ginger, which is a band that I really like as well. They haven't gone over well, I know, on Patreon with you guys. Infected Rain is another band that's like that as well. They're very similar to Ginger, but they're from Moldavia as opposed to Ginger, who's from Ukraine. And Infected Rain has already put out like 5 or 6 albums. The only thing is they've started to get attention these last 2 albums because they've been on Napalm for the last 2. I do think that Napalm has done a good bit to promote all things metal. They remind me a lot of what Nuclear Blast was back in the day, what Century Media was back in the day. They're signing all of these bands that are different types of hard rock and metal bands. And the roster, they're filling out a lot of cool stuff. And I hope that they continue to do that and help give a platform to a lot of these bands. Oh, and another band that I wanted to mention is the Ugly Kings, who we had Nicholas, the bass player, on here a few months back. Similar deal. They're maybe closer to a mixture of heavy blues and hard rock. And I made the Danzig reference, which they didn't care for or didn't see it. But I said, yeah, your music sounds a lot like the first 2 Danzig albums mixed with other stuff that's come out along the way, like some Queens of the Stone Age stuff. So I personally think that, hard rock and metal is safe at the moment. And I do think that the future still looks bright. Again, I don't think that any band is ever going to topple Metallica or Iron Maiden or Black Sabbath. They definitely will not have the emotional connection that they all have with us. But as I always say, just because, you like hamburgers doesn't mean you can't enjoy pizza as well. So something can continue to be your favorite of all time, but doesn't mean that you can't enjoy something else that's on the menu as well. So let's go once around the horn one more time before wrapping things up here. Ed, in your opinion, are things in the hard rock and metal world safe now, and do you think they will be in the future?
Oh yeah, heavy metal is always safe, regardless of the interest from the mainstream world. The heavy metal world is always there. It's always thriving. It'll never die. It's a piece of art that can be done a million different ways, as we see these days. The biggest challenge we have these days is just the gluttony of stuff to sort through. But that makes the treasure hunt continue to be challenging and fun. Looking for the biggest problem I have with the state of metal is so much of the new stuff I hear sounds like it was all recorded in the same studio using the same instruments. It all sounds alike. And the records that I end up investing in are the ones that have a unique sound. And my advice to any band, if they want to hear it from a metal fan, is find a way to come up with a different sound than what everybody's dialing in these days, and you'll stand out from the pack.
Yep. I agree. One of the biggest things when I moved to Spain, hearing a lot of bands, local bands that were sending me stuff, it just sounded like they had the same plugins in the studio to make them either sound. There were 3 bands they were trying to sound like. One was Caius, one was Sepultura, and one was Machine Head. And it didn't vary from there. They all sounded like that. It was ridiculous. So I agree with you, Ed. And that's why, I know that some of the stuff that I picked was all over the place and maybe under the radar for a lot of people, but I like searching that stuff out. And with you being on Patreon now, I realize that it is a lot of video content, but hopefully some of the stuff that I do post will catch your eye and catch your ears, more importantly. And we do have a playlist that we have to figure out what we're going to do with this playlist, folks. Are we going to just continue to have one giant playlist, or are we going to separate the playlist by years? So that'll be something we'll be voting on Patreon shortly. But just so you understand the process, from the videos that I have been posting, people involved in this group, I'm not choosing. Whatever the patrons choose are what goes into this playlist. So if there's anything that catches your ear and you want to have included, we can definitely include it there. So Brad, moving on over to you. In your opinion, there you go. Jerry is at his seat with a frosty beverage, looks like.
Yeah, he's a third in the bag. Yeah, I want to say
I'm not even close.
Okay, all right. You
Brad,
look great though. The blue is flattering. So
give me an hour.
Okay. First of all, I want to say I think Ed's totally on point. As far as the problem of having so many bands that can put music out there now, and that it's hard to differentiate a lot of them. And he is so right, man. You gotta find something that's you, man, and be you. As somebody who's been in a lot of bands, I know how difficult it is to keep a band together, and I think that's going to be the biggest struggle for bands getting huge, is keeping the band together. What do you say, Airborne? Yeah, Airborne. I recently got into Airborne, and I'm playing a hell of a lot of Airborne on Yard Metal now. And they're Australian through and through. I mean, they're not going to hide their sound at all. Arch Enemy, somebody already talked about Arch Enemy. In fact, I've been taking notes of music I need to get into here, and they're at the top of my list. I think it was Jeremy that mentioned them. Yeah. So, thanks to Victor, I've got so many new bands that I've been listening to and that I like, and the problem is there's so many of them. It's hard to fall in love with one of them. Just because there's so many bands. I mean, it's hard to pick one out. I know that the one album that came out recently that I'm sure somehow it had to come through Victor, was a band called Hellsmoke, which from Sweden. There's so many good bands coming out of Sweden. I don't know that they'll get anywhere though, because it's difficult to get them over here to the U.S. That's a struggle for bands to get over here. But that band, every time I listen to something off their album, it's like every single song is incredibly good, and they sound good, and they're probably old dudes. I have no idea. I don't know anything about these guys. And they've probably all been in 20 other bands too. And there's a lot of that going on in Sweden too, the mix and match and guys doing different projects with different people. So that's going to make it more difficult for them any of these bands to be huge. But it'll go on forever. Rock will live forever. But I don't know that we're going to see any of these bands headlining arenas like what Jerry's sitting in right now. We can hope. I think Avenged Sevenfold, Avenged Sevenfold, was that you that mentioned them, Jeremy?
Yeah.
I know my brother is friends with the singer, and I'm playing some of their music because of that. I figured they didn't need our help, but anyway, got the shout out. He seems like a decent dude. but they're huge. They play. I mean, the biggest place you can play whenever they come to here, and they pack it. So, man, good for them. And but I don't know again what their future is. I mean, when was the last time they put out an album? It's been a while, and you know they're kind of going in different directions. They've got a lot of money in their pockets, and I don't know that the hunger is there to keep cranking out music. So that's part of the problem too. It's you got to be hungry, man. You think about all the bands that we really grew up on and we love. I mean, those bands were working it hard, and I mean they came up through the ranks, and they stuck with it, and they're putting out albums just consistently. And they have so many albums now. If a band puts out an album every 3-4 years, that's
right.
Kind of, you know, other than Haunt, who you mentioned. Yeah, my only problem with Haunt. Go ahead.
I agree. I don't think there's a new band that's gonna match the grit and the determination that Maiden and Metallica had. I don't think there's a band can withstand that. And that's on Red. And that's on Red Bull too.
It's tough because they don't have the money behind them anymore.
True. Could you imagine Metallica had Red Bull back in the 80s? Forget about it.
They would have died a long time ago. Yeah,
true.
Look what the two of you guys are saying. Kyle from the Sword told me they couldn't keep up with Metallica. They had to, they had open door to open up for them during the entire Death Magnetic tour. They could have toured the world with them. And after doing, I think it was 2 or 3 legs of the tour, they said they couldn't handle it anymore. It was show, airplane, hotel, and they just couldn't do it. It just
what a bunch of pussies.
And they said they were used to just traveling in vans and just taking it easy and whatnot. And they realized, they said, yeah, the reason that Metallica's that big is because they've grinded it out all these years and done show after show after show. So,
I mean that too, right, Victor? Let the guys in the chat know. These young kids can't do shit anymore except play fucking video games.
All right, well, yeah, I was going to go on an old man rant, but I think Jerry's taking it over, and well done, Jerry. You're right, man. Kids just don't. They're not as tough. I mean, the world is too easy for them, and yeah. So you got to get out there. You got to get out there and rock, and yeah, you gotta bleed on stage, man.
There you go. Give blood, play hockey.
Johan, you've obviously always told us that things are strong up there in Sweden, in Finland, in Norway, and all of these countries. So you don't see hard rock and metal going away anytime soon, obviously.
No.
The future looks bright, and I'm sure your kids and your grandkids and your great-grandkids will probably be able to say the same thing.
Probably. I have another take on this. I think when Maiden and the other bands grew up, they did. Do you say revolt against society? Revolt.
Yes, revolt.
Yeah, and bands from Arabic countries, Indonesia, China, and India. Mm-hmm. That's another scene. There's a lot of metal there, and they do, angry young kids who work hard against government or society. So I see those places in the world perhaps like a big future for hard rock and metal. And I think this is a little bit political, but it needs to be more women in the metal community and bands. That's a big thing here in Sweden. Sweden Rock Festival get a lot of criticism because it's 99% of the bands are males. Mm-hmm. And that's a big thing here. So
there's a lot of women in rock right now, and I mean, guys, just look at all the stuff Victor's posting. There's a lot of women fronted bands, and I'm playing quite a few of them.
yeah,
Again,
but they don't get booked at festivals.
Yeah, that's the problem. I agree.
So
and by the way, there's enough here in the U.S. to be pissed off about for people to get angry and write some good angry music, but I don't see it happening.
I can't hear.
Yeah, you're starting to cut out now, Jerry. You're down to you're down to like one bar on our
He's
end.
back on the island.
Yeah. There's a band he cut out. There's a band that's starting to get press in the U.S. called Plush, which is for women, which are really good.
I just bought their album. I haven't heard it yet, but I bought it. It's in my stack of stuff to listen to, so I'm excited. Yeah, they seem like, young, rocking, let's go out and kick some ass kind of stuff. So
yeah, the singer, if I know the story correctly, I guess she was on The Voice or something like that. She did that to try to get exposure, and then now this band that they put together, all four of them can play. They did a cover of an Alter Bridge song, which to me sounds better than the original, because I'm not a fan of Miles Kennedy. But the guitarist that they have is playing the solo better than Mark Tremonti is. So that's Johan. That's a band you should check out.
Plush.
Yeah, Plush. Plush.
And they're American, right?
Yeah. They're from the singer. She's from upstate New York, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm that's on my to listen list. I've been listening to Rob's music all day long, which is interesting. So just a shout out for Rob and his music.
There you go. Steve, in your opinion, hard rock and metal still safe now? Still safe in the future?
Still safe now for sure, and in the future, hopefully.
Okay.
I mean, I keep seeing some younger bands, so I'm hoping. But I think it was Ed that mentioned that it was just hard for bands to get traction.
Mm-hmm.
Which sucks because there are a lot of good bands out there, but they might not go anywhere. Like I think Fury's amazing, but I don't know if they're ever going to get the traction to do much.
Right. Yeah, it's, believe me, I get maybe 30 promos a day, and it's hard to cut through all that stuff. It's difficult to weed all the stuff that's out there out. The internet is so great for certain things, but for other things, it also makes it really difficult to cut through a lot of the noise. So,
I bought 2 Fury albums, Steve. So I've been and I like what I've heard so far. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Cool. That's hopefully in the new year, I'll be reaching out to them, see if I can get them on the show. So
cool.
Yeah, let me know what songs you want me to play. You can just text me or whatever, Steve.
Okay.
There you go.
Date.
Jeremy, it was your concept originally, so
Yep.
I want you to take us home with this. Hard rock and metal safe today, and is it safe in the future?
Well, from listening to everybody else, it sounds it's in very healthy state. I'd say it is in a good state, but it's changing all the time. And I'm a bit worried about things like pricing, pricing of vinyl, pricing of concerts, pricing of merch. I hear a lot of complaints about that from fellow rock fans who are put off by it. So I think if you price it right, people will go, people will participate in rock music. But from a supply sort of side, people are always going to make music. It's a creativity thing. So it doesn't matter. You don't have to make money from making music. People will always create it. But in terms of getting people to shows, getting rock music, keeping it going as a a pastime, as a entertainment. It really needs. They need to think about the pricing, because I've got tickets for Aerosmith and they're absolutely extortionate. And my wife wants to go and see Rod Stewart, which is not quite rock music now, but you can imagine how much that's going to cost. It's just becoming ridiculous. So that's a bit of a problem. And I think there are some bands out there, that are not making any money from touring. You spoke to the guy out of Manimal about that recently on one of your shows. But generally speaking, there's a lot of new music out there, and it's great. From all the, you can listen to 100 albums, and there'll be one or two that that's gonna blow your mind. And that's a great thing. And you don't have to listen to Michael Schenker Group. You don't have to listen to Motorhead or Iron Maiden for the rest of your life. You can listen to that stuff, which is great. We want to listen to that, but we want to listen to new music as well. And there's a huge amount out there. And you know that because you're posting it up every week, and it's great.
Yeah. To your point, mentioning the Samuel Nyman interview from Manimal, he said as long as they broke even, they would tour.
Yeah.
That the extra pay came from the rush that the crowd gave him. And
see, that's the kind of attitude that a band, if they have that's going to help them make it.
Yeah. Well, that album, to me, the first time I heard it, I got it 2 months ago, and instantly hearing it, I said this is going to be in my top 10 this year because it's good front to back. And he was saying, that the biggest knock was that they weren't original. There's nothing original that's coming out anymore. So as long as it sounds good, got kick-ass songs that are memorable, that entertain you, fuck being original. As long as it sounds good. And to what Ed mentioned before, a lot of what he was talking about reminded me of the 90s. A lot of people talk about what a dark period the 90s was for hard rock and metal. But if you search things out, if you listen to Testament's albums, if you look at those albums they put out in that decade, are phenomenal albums. They got heavier instead of getting more commercial. And those guys all were working second jobs at the same time. So, and a lot of the bands that started coming back were, we're working on the side. Shit, the Armored Saint guys that, are still working, side gigs to make sure that they can do their regular stuff. So, yeah. But anyway,
Overkill has a second job.
Who does?
I think everybody in Overkill has a second job.
Well, that's why Ron Lipnicki left the band. Actually, was because he was working at 84 Lumber over there. What is that, Denville or off of 80? Yeah, okay. Yeah. He was bringing home more money from driving a truck from them than touring with Overkill, and his wife basically said, "Why are you killing yourself touring the world and dealing with all these band politics when you could, you're 10 minutes from home and making more money?"
Yeah.
So
I can't blame the guy.
Yeah. So
no, you got to have the hunger, man. You got to be willing to, like I said, bleed, man. You got to, yeah. That's why I'm living where I'm living now, as I got out of it.
There you go.
Yeah, when I want a new bass, guess what? I go out and buy it.
Well, we'll comment on the bass in a second because
you need to tell us about the bass that you had on Fireside.
I'll in a second on the after show. I'll let you know.
Okay, cool.
Anyway, I do want to thank everyone that joined us live. We had Rob in the chat. We had Jose in the chat. We had some spammer in the chat as well.
I'm keeping my drink blue for Jerry.
There you go. So I want to thank all of you guys for joining me tonight. If you're watching this live or if you're watching the replay, and enjoy what you guys are listening to or what you guys got to witness and want to be a part of this, for as little as $2 a month, join the Patreon and you can be part of the monthly discussions here on Signals from Mars. Next week, we will be talking about the our favorite albums of 2021. So we'll be doing similar to the 1981 show, where we'll ask every one of these fine gentlemen to submit a list, and based on that, each album will be assigned points, and we'll determine what the number one album was for the year for all the patrons. So, on that note, thanks everyone for watching. Again, I appreciate it immensely that you guys decide to spend your Fridays or whenever you're watching or listening to this with me and all of my great patrons. I appreciate all of the patron support and any one of you watching that like or share this. So please subscribe. Please tell everyone about this. And on that note, we will see you next time right here on the Signals from Mars live stream. See ya.
Rock out, everybody.